What's happening, guys? James Blonde here with MMOHuts.com. This time taking a quick first look at the end of the third alpha for Supernova, a new sci-fi MOBA and RTS hybrid game from Bandai Namco. Now, the theme and style of this game is heavily influenced by StarCraft, as you might have noticed already, all the way down to its RTS elements, just enough to freshen up the MOBA aspect of the game without making things too complex or micromanaged. And when I say MOBA, I mean the Dota style game, like with lanes, towers, and minions. But in this game, it actually lets you decide what minions are pushing your lane to a certain extent by building them up into an army over the course of the match, like you would in any RTS, like StarCraft, or even more recently, Grey Goo. The game kind of looks like that. So currently the game is in alpha testing through several phases, the third of which just ended, and the fourth is set to begin May 13th, and they seem to last a few weeks at a time at this point, so keep in mind that the game is still in alpha, and I'll give you guys a nice breakdown of what the game offers. So first things first, there are two factions in the game, separated by a couple of things that make them unique, but not advantageous over one another. It's humans versus cyborgs in this case, and the faction versus faction aspect in this game also adds to its RTS style. In a similar way, the factions differ in, say, the old Command & Conquer, where you have the GDI versus Nod. Both offer something different in terms of their gameplay style, but they're also both balanced. It's very rock, paper, scissors, except obviously you only have two factions in this game. So with Supernova, the difference between the humans and the cyborgs is very minimal. In fact, both factions actually have the same champions to choose from, so it's not separated there like it is, say, with Prime World, for example, which is another MOBA. One of the differences lies within the unit types that are built as your minion waves and the way they look, and the other difference has to do with how your commander, as they call them in this game, gets back and forth to the battlefield. And I'll show you more of what I mean as we go along. Now, what the developers have done in this game is essentially replace the item shop system in the match with a army building mechanic. You still have the opportunity to improve and tweak your commander as they level up, but that isn't as much of a focus in this game. Instead, it focuses more on the tactical strategy and timing rather than the typical hero versus hero duels, even though those are still in there and they're very fun like you'd expect them to be. So needless to say, it's the little guys that are important in this game, the minions. So to recap, you have an army creation system that lets you build up potentially a stronger push than your opponent, rather than a complicated item system that focuses on your commander. Luckily, the game has a nice introduction tutorial to allow you to grasp this new concept. At first, I was sort of thinking that this was going to be a lot of micromanaging, because I'm thinking of an RTS game, and a lot of RTS games can be that way. But thankfully, it's only a process that you set in motion. So you start building your army with resources that you gain that replace the typical gold flow that you are used to in other MOBAs. In this game, you passively gain resources to spend on your army, but you can speed this up by killing enemy commanders as well as jungle mobs. Getting this started requires you to build the initial factory, as they call it in this game, a prerequisite to make the most basic units. Although you're not literally making a building, this simply gives you access to the most basic units, which in this case for the humans are the Pathfinders and Stingers here. After the initial factory is complete, then you're able to start building the units for your army. So there is a wait time to adding and upgrading your army, and in this case your army spawns in waves, just like you're used to minions spawning in other MOBAs. You don't have to build any structures or anything like that, but you do have to wait in order to add the next unit to the next wave. And so this is how you gain additional resources, like I said, passively. For each wave that is launched, you gain more resources, which is automatic, of course. So you keep gaining resources over time, and the bigger your army, the more resources you gain in order to continue to make your army bigger. So hopefully you're following along here. From here, you can decide what units make up your army. You have 4 different types of units you can choose from, regardless of the faction, and one RTS element the developers focused on bringing over to this game is the fact that different units are designed to take on other units differently, meaning that some units like Pathfinders, for example, are effective against ground units only, whereas other units like Stingers are effective against both ground and air units. And this stays the same throughout all the units that you can put in your army, and you kind of have to learn each unit's strength and weakness. They also have an army overview panel that indicates and helps you understand the balance between the units in your army against your direct opponent's army. This is really helpful for you to figure out what you need more of in order to counter your enemy's units and hopefully overpower them eventually. That's pretty much the core goal in this game. The nice part is all the units you purchase from here on out continue to spawn in every consecutive wave. So you're not actually having to create everything from scratch each time like you would in a typical RTS. Those units die, you gotta make them again. Once you decide to make a unit, it's basically just putting it into a queue for each wave until you complete the entire match. So it's autopilot pretty much, minus the fact that you actually have control over what the army consists of. And by the way, just to make things clear, the objective in this game is the same as other MOBAs, except you compete more with your minions than your commander, like I was mentioning earlier. Now, to stretch this mechanic a little further, there are a few more features they've added in to spice things up a bit. First, there's a max supply of units that you can have, so you can't just sit there and build a huge army, mainly because, you know, they come out in waves, but you also can't make an army ultimately bigger than opponents, so this makes you think a little bit more tactically. There isn't anything stopping you from making 30 ground units or 30 air units, but clearly you don't want to do that due to the idea behind countering your opponent's army, so you want to focus on having a huge variety of units and make adjustments accordingly to push through your enemy's forces, just like you might alter an item build in other MOBA games according to what's actually happening in the match. That's where another feature might be handy, the ability to sell unit types to add other types due to supply restrictions. If you have too many of one type and need to sell those in order to better balance yourself out because your opponent is kicking your ass, you can do that, which is nice. On top of just purchasing units, which cost different amounts according to what you're wanting to buy, you can also boost your resources with every wave by purchasing upgrade resource income, which is an item you can click on to purchase. You can do this very early on in the match, which might slow down your early game a little bit, but give you a nice boost in resources later. So it's up to you to decide when you do this. You can also spend resources on elite training, which will boost the strength of your next wave only. So this is best to utilize once an army has been upgraded close to its max supply, if not max supply. Although if you do have enough resources, you can choose to decide to use it sooner in order to deliver a buffed up army earlier on for a surprise attack, if anything. This does cost a lot of resources, so kind of like a super weapon in some RTS games, you've got to pick the right time in order to use it. And one last thing about the army system in this game is the convenience of auto army, which doesn't exactly build an army for you like auto buy or auto level systems work. Instead, this lets you worry less about best match units against your opponent. So what auto army does when it's on is suggest for you the next unit you should add to your army and how many, or when to use your elite training. So you still have to do these actions yourself. This is just like a suggestion guide, so that way you don't have to make it a point to see the best way to balance yourself out against your opponent. So now that I've explained that, you might be able to see that the commander in this situation is basically the final ingredient to win the match, not exactly the primary ingredient. So with that said, you'll notice that there isn't a whole lot of flair when it comes to the commanders in this game. They still have 3 abilities and an ultimate. They still have separate roles that they play on the battlefield. You can still change their stats as you progress, but more like the heroes are set up in Air Mech, as an example. They are not the center of attention near as much in this game as they are in other MOBAs you've been playing. But just like any other MOBA, you level up in this game, and as you gain XP, you gain upgrade points that you can add directly to your commander's stats, whether that be weapon damage, power, attack speed, and so on. This, of course, can only be done when you're at your home base, which is called an auger in this game, so it kind of makes me think that the premise here is that you and your enemy are both seeking resources on a planet that you've landed on. Therefore, you are building these armies in order to compete for these resources. Anyway, you do get rewarded mastery points by killing enemy commanders. Now these let you pick up masteries, which you can equip and then further upgrade as you get more mastery points. These offer various buffs to overall stats in addition to what you can already change with your commander upgrade points. So you can definitely see that there's still a good reason to seek out and kill other players, other than the fact that it's, you know, fun. Another cool aspect to this game is the recall and drop-off function. Now the recall is pretty normal, minus the fact that for the humans you have to wait for a transport ship in order to pick you up and take you back to your auger, and the time that it takes for your dropship to get there determines the time it takes for you to get back to your base. But you can start upgrading your commander on the trip back to save time. The Cyborg Faction, and this is one of the differences besides the way the army units look between the two factions, they get to use a recall function pretty much the same way you're used to in other MOBAs, where you wait a little while, but then you instantly teleport back to your base. The major difference is in the drop-off function that lets you do just the opposite of recall and actually select a visible location on the battlefield to return to. This has a 360-second cooldown, so you're only able to use this a couple of times in a match, but it does get you back to the fight really quick, so you're definitely going to use it. For the human faction here, it's the same process. You've got to wait for the dropship to take you out to the location that you've selected, and of course the further out from your base, the longer that's going to take. Now the Cyborg faction, on the other hand, is a little different here. With their drop-off, you have to select a minion, tower, or ally to teleport to, and it's based on a time, just like recall. So like I mentioned earlier, there are differences between the two factions, but nothing really that drastic. Perhaps later on there'll be more differences. I did notice that you can switch freely between the two factions at any time and then level them up individually, which in turn gives you access to things like alliances, more alliances, which are helping abilities like Rush and Medical Drone that you can use in a match. Medical Drone, as an example, being an ability that you can equip to use that will give you a healing AoE, but of course has a long cooldown in return. As far as monetization goes in this game, it's pretty standard to other MOBAs. It's a very familiar model. They already have skins that you can purchase with real currency. They have a free rotation system on all the commanders, and for now, in the alpha testing, you can try out all of them, but when the game goes more public, you'll be able to buy additional commanders with in-game currency as well as real cash currency. There are also themes for the army units, but I wasn't able to look into these at this time, so it seems like you'll even have skins for your units at some point, which is kind of cool. But anyway guys, if you feel that your wounds have healed from the constant bombardment of new MOBAs on the market this past year, which has slowed down a lot, definitely give Supernova a shot when you can. It feels a bit more like a StarCraft custom game mode than your typical MOBA gameplay, just because it relies so heavily on these RTS elements. And I can say that you've never had to focus so hard to react to enemy minions as you do with this game. So, with the sci-fi feel and the RTS elements of putting together your own minion waves, and it actually be important to do so, I've got to admit, it's kind of a breath of fresh air when it comes to the MOBAs. It's worth taking a look at anyway. Like I mentioned, the game is in alpha testing, even though it feels more like a polished beta, minus the larger player base it would have. Right now, registering on their website is the best way to get in, and if you do, you typically get an invite to give to a friend. But once again, guys, thanks for watching. Pick up more information about Supernova at the game profile at the new MMOHuts.com, and until next time, guys, that's going to be it for me. I'm James Blonde. See you out there, gamers.